You know, usually when I make a film criticism is dead video, I try to wait until I can see the film for myself, just so I can be properly informed and dispute ridiculous criticisms to the best of my ability. But every so often, a film comes along that inspires critics to very obviously not stay in their lane. Because you can tell from the moment they start writing that their reasons for disliking something are not based on what's on screen, but based on their own personal biases and insecurities. And right now, that is exactly what is happening with some of these Rebel Moon reviews. Now again, I did not see this film. It could be amazing, and it could be awful. I have no idea. I'll let you know my thoughts when I see it for myself. But one thing I will not do is sit idly by while so-called critics try to negatively impact the perception of a film based on their own personal bullshit. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So for anyone who's been watching me for any length of time, you know that I'm fair when it comes to reviewing films. In fact, I pride myself on it. I can make 100 videos about the outside BS that surrounds a film before the film is even released. And yet still, when I sit down to actually review the film, none of that exterior matters. Because quite frankly, that is what a film critic is supposed to do. They're supposed to be objective. They're supposed to be critiquing films based purely on the content contained within them.
That makes sense.
Let me be very clear. I don't care whether you like Zack Snyder or you don't. I don't care if you are one of his loyal fans or you find his fans to be completely obnoxious and you cannot stand them. You could talk about all of that all day long on social media, on YouTube comment sections, go crazy. But if you consider yourself to be a critic, and I'm not talking about fanboys masquerading as critics, I'm talking about legitimate film critics, then all of these exterior things should be the furthest thing from your mind when you're actually reviewing a film. Because when it comes to critiquing the quality of a film, none of that really matters. And it damn sure shouldn't be mentioned in your review. And you wonder why I say consistently that film criticism is dead. It's because of bull like this.
Man, I'm tired of being right.
The truth is that there are people or critics with platforms that are using those platforms to influence conversations around certain films in the direction they want it to go in. And of course they're doing this for all the wrong reasons. And I want to make this very clear. This is not something that happens just with this movie or just with Zack Snyder movies. I've made many videos on this subject referencing the reactions to different types of movies. All you have to do is go back and watch. This is why I consistently beat my hand on this desk and say that Rotten Tomatoes does more damage than it does good. It's misleading and it most certainly should not be taken seriously. Now I know what a lot of you are thinking, who takes Rotten Tomatoes seriously anyway? Well, believe it or not, with the exception of people who are in the know, people like me and some of you, we have to understand that general audiences do not know about the shady practices of Rotten Tomatoes. In fact, I've heard many people in my everyday life reference a Rotten Tomatoes score, and they do factor that into their decision as to whether or not they are going to see a film. It's sad, it's unfortunate, but yes, some people still use it as confirmation.
Why do these things always happen to me?
Why do you think that when a studio advertises a movie, they still use the Rotten Tomatoes score in their TV spots? It's because the normies still associate a high Rotten Tomatoes score with quality. So like it or not, believe it or not, Rotten Tomatoes can still impact the performance of a film. And to me, that's not right when you consider how flawed and corrupt this system actually is. I don't know how many different ways I can say this before people understand what's truly going on here. I strongly believe that some of the critics on Rotten Tomatoes who are reviewing films have a much too personal issue with certain directors and sometimes even certain studios, and it routinely impacts their ability to be objective. Like Kyle Wilson, for instance, from Polygon, who said this about Rebel Moon. Everyone but the hashtag release the Snyder Cut fanboys would be better off immediately ejecting this turgid whimper of a movie into the farthest reaches of the galaxy.
Shut up.
Now I know somebody's going to respond to this video because they always do and say that's not his whole review. They're going to say to me that that's just a piece of his review, and I would respond to that by saying no. But here's a question, what do you think your average person who might actually read Rotten Tomatoes reviews is actually going to take the time to read? His full review, or this little excerpt that is going to sum up his thoughts? If this person didn't want this to be the summary of his thoughts, then maybe he shouldn't have said it. Because I have to be honest, this summary, this consensus, whatever you want to call it, makes me not want to see the rest of his review. Because this excerpt makes him sound like an internet troll lashing out at people he doesn't like more than it does a legitimate film critic. I wish someone, anyone, would explain to me why the Release the Snyder Cut movement and Zack Snyder's fans in general are being mentioned in a movie review.
I don't get it.
Insecurity? Bias? Hatred? I'm reading your review to hear about direction, writing, story, plot, cinematography, acting, not about your dislike of a fan base. I could give two shits about how you feel about Zack Snyder's fan base. It's irrelevant to the conversation, but the reality has become that so many people are damaged because Zack Snyder made a Superman movie that they don't agree with, that they refuse to let it go and judge his new film objectively because they have too strong of a personal hate towards him for some reason.
S-O-F capital T. Soft. Huh?
Zack Snyder does not work for WB anymore. Zack Snyder does not make DC movies anymore. So can we move on, because it appears that he has. It's also absolutely ridiculous that a review like this is allowed to stay up on this website and be counted toward the film's overall score. Because this is not film criticism, this is petty bullshit. Then we have Owen Gleiberman of Variety, who says, Rebel Moon, while eminently watchable, is a movie built so entirely out of spare parts that it may, in the end, be for Snyder cultists only. So I have to ask the question again, why are we bringing up fans in a movie review? It should be a given at this point that Zack has a very loyal fan base and that he makes movies to appeal to them. There's nothing wrong with that, and that's not a film criticism. That's an observation. I've mentioned in the past how Marvel Studios makes content for a certain type of fan, but I do that in my article or Twitter reaction videos. When it comes down to me talking about the actual quality of a film, you have to tune all that out and judge it on its own merits. And I do not understand why this is a difficult concept for supposed critics to understand. But honestly, we all know that they're not concerned with trying to understand, and they're not concerned with giving this movie a fair chance. What they really wanted to do in their reviews was express their overall opinions about Zack Snyder and his fan base. Because why else would they be mentioning them?
Why?
Why else would he use the term cultist instead of just saying, I know this movie is going to work for some people? That's what I say as a critic when I'm watching something that I don't like, that I know other people might enjoy. But that right there, ladies and gentlemen, is the difference between a real critic and a troll. But let's be honest, everyone's a troll nowadays, even the people you're supposed to be relying on to give sound judgment. When it comes right down to it, I see a lot of people going out of their way to be disrespectful towards Zack Snyder more than they would any other director. When reviews are consistently mentioning something about Zack Snyder that sounds more personal, or mentioning his loyal fan base, this should be a red flag to anyone who actually values real film discussion and film criticism. It should be clear that that person did not come to have a conversation, they came to point fingers and start an argument. This right here is the genesis for everything that I talk about in these videos, and honestly, it disgusts me more and more every time I see it. Because all it really does is cause more division and more unhealthy conversation, and it's misleading when you take into consideration how these so-called reviews are being integrated into the Rotten Tomatoes system. To me, this type of thing is the very definition of toxic through and through. And yet, once again, I don't see a lot of articles being written about it. I don't see a lot of videos on YouTube being made about it. And why is that? Because it doesn't fit into the narrative that's already been established. The truth is that Zack Snyder and his fan base have been portrayed as villains for so long by the media and on social media that the actual villains, the people who are ruining the film industry and ruining film discussion, are going unnoticed. The bottom line is that this is not fair to Zack Snyder or his movie, and as always, I will stand with fandom and filmmakers before I stand with a troll masquerading as a film critic on a garbage tier website like Rotten Tomatoes.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.